Right to be Read podcast, episode number 38. Interview with Philip Norvaljoe, Carroll.
You are listening to the Right to be Read podcast, and this is your host, Ani Alexander.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Right to be Read podcast, the podcast that inspires and encourages writers. I'm your host, Ani Alexander, and today I have another listener's interview. If you would like to be interviewed for the show, just send me an email at ani@anialexander.com, Ani spelled A-N-I, ani@anialexander.com, and explain me why do you think that your story is worth sharing with the listeners. I will get back to you very soon and we'll figure something out together. Today I'm interviewing Philip Norvaljoe, Carroll, who just a few days ago launched his very first book. Philip is an Army-trained certified orthotist living in the Central Valley of California. He is a husband of many years, a father of 3, and grandfather of 3. He enjoys spending time with his family, trips to the mountains, and playing the piano. He has been a storyteller all of his life and has been honing his writing skills for the last 6 years. He has just finished his first book through Amazon KDP and CreateSpace called Flypaper Boy Coming of Age, and previously published 2 books in serialized audio at podiobooks.com. He has had also several short stories published in anthologies and Emacs. So let's see what journey did he go through and how did he end up with finally having his book out and being able to share it with the world. Well, hello, Philip. I'm really happy to have you on my show. Welcome to the Right to be Read.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, I really enjoy this listeners' interviews part because, first of all, I get the proof that people are listening to this show, which not always is obvious. And second, I really love hearing about the success they are having. So just a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago?
It was 1 week ago.
One week ago. Okay, yes. Just a week ago, your first Kindle book and the paperback as well came out. And I would like to go back and start from the very beginning. So you can maybe just tell us about the background and how did you start writing in general?
Okay. Yeah, probably about 6.5 years ago, I found that I could listen to something on my iPod called a podcast. And, I started investigating and searching around to find something interesting to listen to. And I stumbled upon a couple that just, pointed me in the direction of writing. One was finding audio books that were podcast novels in serialized form. Nathan Lowell and his Quarter Share series, and Scott Sigler and P.G. Holyfield with his I forgot the name naturally, but I listened to these guys reading their own stories, podcasting their own stories, and I thought, that sounds like a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. But I didn't go very far with it from there. But I did get into Mer Lafferty's "You Should Be Writing" podcast, and she mentioned one time about the 100-word weekly challenge, to where there's a Lawrence Simon at oneadayuntilthedayidie.com does a 100-word story every day. And he has a weekly challenge once a week, of course, with a prompt. And we'd write our story with exactly 100 words and record it and send it to him, before on Saturday night. And he'd post them all up on Sunday morning. And we'd all listen to everybody else's 100-word stories. So I was enjoying that. It was a new thing for me. And I was using my, gaming headset and it sounded real cruddy. But it was fun, just like everyone else. And about 6 weeks into it, that was in September. And then I hear about this NaNoWriMo thing, and people are NaNoWriMo. And I thought, no, there's no way I could do NaNoWriMo. I mean, I'm just doing 100-word stories. And on the 10th of October, I thought, I'm going to give it a try. So I signed up on the 10th of October and wrote my first 50,000 words. And it's absolute garbage, but it had a theme and a plot. And I called myself a NaNoWriMist, After that, there was another guy on the 100-word challenge named Jeffrey Height, and he had Great Heights podcast, and he'd give us a prompt, and we could write up to 3,000, 4,000 words for a prompt and record it. And I did probably 50 of those over the next couple of years, and I haven't missed a week of the 100-word weekly challenge. I mean, I'm at like 300 and something in a row of sending those in, but and that just started me. I found that I've always been a storyteller from the time I was a kid. My twin brother and I used to sit around and we'd tell each other stories. We'd make up stories, and we'd have our different characters, and we'd do their voices and carry them through dialogues. And so it was just something that I'd always done and never really realized that I could follow through. And I'd tried a couple of times, but once I listened to this, Mur Lafferty said, you should be writing, you can do it. I thought, I'll give it a try. And after NaNoWriMo, I thought, I can do it. I pumped out 50,000 words in 20 days. I thought, let's give it a shot. And building off of off of Great Heights podcast, I had 50 or 60 short stories that I wrote. And from that, I developed my own audio book called The Price of Friendship that I published on podiobooks.com probably 3 or 4 years ago, and it's still there. And I actually got a response from the first person ever saying that, hey, I listened to your story and I really liked it. Are you planning on doing more? And I thought, why didn't you say that a month ago? And I'd be working on it now. But so that was rewarding for the first time. But and I have a follow-up novella for Price of Friendship. But that just kind of got me started. And, year after year, I've done NaNoWriMo every year. And so that's 6 years in a row. And I've got 6 manuscripts from that. And I've written a couple of novels in between. So I've probably written about 9 novel-length stories. And just finally decided, going to Worldcon in Reno, they mentioned vampires. And I thought, I'm going to write my own vampire story the way I want to write a vampire story. And that's when I really decided, okay, I've come to the point where I can write a story that's reasonably written, and I can probably do something with it. I'd taken, Jeremy Shipp had an online writing course that I took from him, and I've taken a few other things from other people, but nothing big. I'm taking one from David Farland, the Writing Mastery, and just trying to hone down my skills. And I figured after 5 years of practice, I should probably start putting something out. Now I have 3 lined up, the one that I just published, and then 2 more to come out, which are not related to each other, but they're all in the same vein.
What kind of genre is that?
I'm typically doing young adult. And I found, not because I set out to say I just like young adult stories, I just found that as I wrote these prompt-based stories, at Great Heights, I often use teenage characters. And I asked myself, why do you do that? And well, I think it's because the teenage years are just so full of energy and excitement, anything's possible when you're a teenager. It's just a time of growth and expansion and commitment and all kinds of stuff. And it just seems like the most exciting time to me to live. So why not, write about it and put your young people in different situations and see how they come out.
Okay, so you wrote all those pieces, and you wrote the NaNoWriMo novels as well. And what kept you from sharing it with the world? Because I presume that manuscripts were with you, just you didn't do anything with those, right?
Well, the one I just released last week was NaNoWriMo 2011. So the first one I tried rewriting recently, a couple of years ago, and it's just so poorly written, I had to start over. And I just got bogged down, and it wasn't as exciting as it was before. The second year, I got 65,000 words, but it was nowhere near done. And I just realized I needed to know more about science to complete that one. And then the third year was when I really wrote something that I thought I could really work with. And that year I wrote will be the novel coming out in February.
Okay,
so
I see.
I'm going back and picking up the things that I wrote and refining and fine-tuning them, because they just were not ready for human consumption. They were just poorly written. And every time I'd come back to something, I would apply to it what I'd learned. And that's why I put The Price of Friendship out, because I had written and rewritten that one 4 times after taking this class and that class. And I learned where I'd done something wrong and how to do it better. And I had rewritten that one so many times, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to produce it now because this is where it's going to be. And, someday if I'm rich and famous and they want something else for me to do, I'll go back and I'll rewrite that one. In fact, I have a goal to write the 3rd portion of that probably in spring of 2015, just so that I have that complete. I'll podcast it, and then if it does anything, I'll just rewrite it.
Okay, so can I phrase it that you were ready to put it out once you decided that it was good enough to put out?
The first one, yeah. After that, I wrote the second one I tried to publish. I actually pitched it to agents and submitted it to a couple publishers. It's Shooting Stars, which is going to come out in December. It's a teenage vampire love story from a boy's perspective.
Uh-huh.
And I workshopped it, and I worked on it, and I thought it was pretty good. And I wanted a publisher, if they were going to accept it, to have their editor go through it. Mm-hmm. And it got rejected twice. And as it was getting rejected the second time, I had really come to decide that I want to go the self-publishing route. Mm-hmm. It just makes sense to me that if I can maintain control of my own work, I can control the price, start my, the platform, start my platform small and build off of it. Mm-hmm. I can build it at my pace. And in 10 years' time, which is the goal that I'm looking at retirement, I'm an old guy. I'm 54. So I'm hoping to retire.
Well, it's not that old.
Not that old, but I'm getting more tired as it goes. But my son will be 20, and he has autism. And so I will need to spend more time in his care. He won't have a school program to go to in 10 years' time. So I hope to be able to just knock off the full-time job and be able to have a little more flexibility and continue writing, but also take more care of him.
Okay, so you have a full-time job and you have a family and you have a son who needs more attention than in general. So how do you manage to find time for writing?
Yeah, it's actually getting harder. 2 or 3 years ago, it was a whole lot easier. Since that time, my wife's become fairly well disabled. So, yeah, it's a real sob story. I'm looking for pity. But in fact, 3 years ago, I had an adult daughter that lived in town. And if I wanted to just sequester myself, I could have her watch the younger kids and help out my wife and that type of thing. And I could get the writing done. But right now, I usually get up just before 5 o'clock to get my son on the bus by 7, and I have a daughter who's 12, and I need to get her to school and then to work. So I have now, as it turns out, I have about an hour in the morning. If I get up at 4:30, I can get about an hour's worth of writing in before I go to work. And once I get to work, I can usually squeeze in another half an hour. Usually go 10 minutes into the work day, but no one's there watching me at that point. Mm-hmm. And so I can usually get an hour, hour and a half in the morning, and then lunchtime, I'm usually pretty focused on what I need to write. Back in the beginning, I was more of a organic writer and just let things go wherever they wanted and hammered out as many words as it took. But now after these last couple NaNoWriMos, I've gotten to where I really outline quite specifically. Mm-hmm. And I've started outlining for NaNoWriMo next month, and I've already got like 1,000 words into the outline, and that's probably just the first couple of chapters. So I'll know exactly what I need to write when I sit down. Mm-hmm. I take my lunch. I don't leave for lunch anymore, and I can usually get 1,000 words out in an hour. So, and then in the evening when I get home, during NaNoWriMo, I'll sacrifice other people's time. I'll spend more time writing than normally. Mm-hmm. And I'll probably get, 2,000, 2,500 words a day. Last year, I had 100,000 words by the 28th of November.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's impressive because many people who are even professional writers, not always they put themselves under such pressure because NaNoWriMo is kind of a sprint kind of thing, and you get to write in a very short time frame, quite a big volume relatively if you compare it with the number of days. Right. So and not always you get the time and the mood to do that. So it's a bit of stressful thing to do, but I've done NaNoWriMo for 2 years as well, and what it helps me is it's a very good accountability tool for me because very often I end up doing several projects parallel to each other, and I don't mean writing projects. I have different things and writing included, so I end up sometimes dedicating more time to one of the projects, and then the writing suffers at that stage. And during NaNoWriMo, whether you want it or not, the writing becomes priority. And people around you kind of, get used to that fact also, right? They know that November is the month that they will see you least somehow.
And they usually know to ask, so what's your word count, and how you doing? And
exactly. So during November, while doing NaNoWriMo, we become a very concentrated writers, and we get all these, the different things which are specific to writers. They are illustrated much more during those times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what about while writing a novel? What are the biggest challenges for you? What you come across that you have to overcome?
My biggest challenge is just I'm impatient, and I would rather write something to get to the point where I'll say, "Oh, this was what I wanted to say," and skip over it, making it really good. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? I'm in such a hurry to get done. To look back on it and enjoy the story that I've written. I find writing a story is almost 10 times more enjoyable to me than reading one. And I used to read all the time, and now since I write, I had to cut that way back because I'm spending my spare time writing. Although at work I do listen to audiobooks while I'm working, and I listen to podcasts and all kinds of stuff because I make stuff with my hands for much of my day, so I can just put my headphones on and stick to myself.
So what are you doing at work exactly?
I'm a certified orthotist.
Okay.
I make orthopedic braces.
Yeah.
So I make leg braces, back braces, lots of arch supports. I got trained in the Army, and I had stuck with it. I enjoy it. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. I've got a good job that I enjoy. So
which is a very fortunate thing actually, because not many have this opportunity to. I know many people who feel extremely unhappy going to work, but they have to. So it's a big pressure they are going through every single day. So that part is very fortunate for you.
Yes, I feel very blessed.
Yeah, and what's let's go to the opposite. What do you enjoy most during the process of writing?
Oh, just living the lives of my characters. Just finding out what they are and what makes them tick, and then enjoying the spontaneous things that come from, or not from the outline, but between the outline. You outline things for them to do, and they still, end up doing other things. It's important to keep on track with your outline, but there's so much spontaneous stuff that does happen. And, I can use this, or, this makes sense. I've already mentioned that, and that works out together well. So I think that's what it is. YA stories are about relationships, and I just enjoy that, developing a relationship with my characters and watching the relationships that they build with each other, and fall in love and fall out of love and have fights and do all that kind of fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. And is what you write a pure fiction, or you use some real life experiences as well?
It's pretty pure fiction. My first NaNoWriMo, the kid was worked in a shoe repair shop, so he used a lot of the things that I knew, how to work on shoes and repair shoes and build shoes. But generally, I use running in it a lot. I have been a runner for a long time and enjoyed that in my, high school and junior high school years. And so there's often that in it, but it's, I've had a very boring life, honestly. That I don't have any phenomenal insights to share from my own youth, other than being, picked on by bullies and being fairly shy. I'm still fairly shy. So yeah, I guess I use that. Often my characters are overcoming their shyness or their feeling of social insecurity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. So let's cover a bit your first book launch. So you had the book, you went through it several times. You ended up with a text which you were comfortable with to share with the world. And what did you do next? I mean, what made you think that you should self-publish? And how did you find out what to do, which should be your action steps?
Yeah, I took this story, Flypaper Boy Coming of Age. I took it to the LDS Storymakers Conference last, I think it was April. Yeah, it was in April. And I went to, we had a publication primer. So we went through each other's books and talked about, what we liked and disliked about them. And I pitched it to an agent there who was very disinterested, other than he thought it should be a graphic novel instead of a novel. Mm-hmm. And it's 95,000 words. Actually, it was like 99,500 words when I had it there, and they recommended that I shorten it, and I brought it down to about 94,000. But I met a couple women there who were editors, and I sent it off to one of them to have it, edited by her, and she went through it and did a real good job of picking out my weaknesses and filling in some plot holes and pointing out some of my, grammar or punctuation errors, and really worked through it. And I paid through the nose for it because I really wanted it to be clean. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. But when I was there, I listened to one session. It was actually a double session on self-publication. And, they brought up names of different authors who publish traditionally and self-published books. And they showed the numbers, how many books they sell this way and what their take-home pay is from that, and how many books they sell this other way. And it just doesn't make sense to me to be in the position I am. I'm nobody. I'm not Dave Farland. I'm not Brandon Sanderson. I'm not going to walk in and get a $1 million contract to write a book. I'm going to start out slow and, like I said, sell a few books now, maybe a few books later. But if I want to make anything from it, I need to build it up and get the best return from it that I can. Mm-hmm. And it was obvious that self-publication was the way to go. And, I got a lot of information from that workshop, but I'm a big podcast listener. So I listened to your podcast, and I listened to, that self-publishing podcast. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, got all my ideas and threw them all in a hat together. And, the only podcast I still listen to on a regular basis is yours. Because
thank you.
You have someone different each time with something different to say. And you have interviews and about all kinds of stuff. But some others, I won't name them because I don't want to make any enemies, but it's the same thing every week, talking about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I can't see any growth from that. But, we had the talk one evening about publishing, and I recorded that so I could go back through and listen to it a couple times and set up my plan of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to release it, and set my price points and went from there.
Well, I'm so happy that our conversation helped, because it was, I truly wished success, and I truly wanted you to have it out and to try and see what will happen next, because I believe that many people waste so much time and so many good books by not sharing it with the world. So I'm a true believer of putting it out there and giving yourself the opportunity to to succeed in the future and to gain new readers. Because if it's left in your computer or in your drawer or in your mind, even because many don't even write it down, it's a huge waste. It's just it's a very regretful thing to do. So I really wanted you to have it out and to experience the feeling of having people read it, of having even people you don't know read it, and getting the feedback and reviews, which is quite a rewarding thing to have.
Sure. I've felt for a long time that the guy I listened to years ago was Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits of a Highly Successful People.
Yeah.
And one thing he said you have to do is cultivate an abundance mentality. When you have when you have the mentality that there's only a limited amount of success, a limited amount of prestige, of awareness, then you're grasping and you have the wrong attitude. You have to consider there's a limitless amount of possibilities. And with writing, that's truly the way it is. Everybody has a market that they can, and a niche that they can fill. My writing will never be as good as Brandon Sanderson's, or David Farland's.
Well,
but,
you never know.
yeah, give me 15 years, maybe. But but if it's not, that's okay, because there are people that are going to enjoy my book. And once I find the people that enjoy my type of story, they'll come back for more. And as long as I can continue to provide them with the stories that they like to hear, and, with my characters who I like, then I will have a successful, ongoing, passive income. Plus, I'll be able to enjoy my retirement. I mean, what do I want to do when I retire in 10 years? I want to visit my daughter and see my grandkids. And I want to travel. I want to go to, Worldcon and World Fantasy conventions, and if I can develop the kind of passive income and at the same time continue to grow my business in writing, then I think that's a win in both ways.
Yeah.
But you'd mentioned what had I done to build up to the launch.
Yeah, you can go through what you concluded after our conversation and which were the action steps you took actually. Yeah.
I missed the part about I should launch it at 99 cents. And, and I look back on it and I don't know if I would have changed that or not. Listening to the self-publishing podcast, they had 2 different weeks. They had a question from listeners almost the same. This is my first book. It's not part of a series. Do I launch it at 99 cents? Or do I give it away for free? Or do I charge $2.99? And they were really up in the air about really which way you should do. It was like, well, you can choose.
You can do both, yeah.
And I realized afterwards, $2.99 is what I charge for 95,000 words. Now, listening to a couple of your interviews over the past couple of weeks, they're selling books for $2.99 that they discount to 99 cents, and they're like 20,000, 25,000 words. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I wrote 95,000 words. And I paid nearly $1,000 between editors and paying my cover artist and all the other various things you have to pay. Mm-hmm. I just really feel like I don't want to discount my books initially. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I started a Goodreads giveaway. I said I'd give away 5 books, and maybe it was a mistake, maybe it wasn't, but I said I would send to Great Britain, South Africa, Australia, and Canada, and the United States. And boy, it's expensive to send a book to Great Britain. It cost like $25 to send the book to Great Britain. Even Canada was like $13. So I don't know if I'd do that again. But
did you use you had the hard copies with you, and you were shipping them from your part? Through the postal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think the cheaper version. I'm from Armenia. I'm living in Armenia, and for example, getting my copies from CreateSpace. First of all, it takes at least 3 to 4 weeks, which is quite long. And second, it's very expensive. So what I did with my giveaways, I ordered on CreateSpace, and the delivery address, I put the address of the people who won the giveaway.
Oh, yeah.
And that was much cheaper for me.
Yeah, see, I didn't think of that.
Yeah,
because it
so
said
next.
that I needed to have the books available to ship at the end of the contest, and I was thinking, okay, I have to have them in my hands.
No. I mean, you can order it and it goes straight to them, and that's a cheaper option. At least for me, it was, and I gained time because otherwise I had to wait for at least 3 weeks to get the books over here, and then posting from here would take at least 2 weeks, so the person who won the giveaway could receive it, and like that, it was first much faster and cheaper at the same time. So I guess it worked. It worked well. So you can do it next time. I guess.
would do that with international. I think.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I have family in South Africa. That's why I considered sending. I want them to feel involved or available too. But I'm a little bit. I'm
sorry. I'm sorry. How many people added your book during the giveaway?
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Sorry.
We're 515 or 520 that requested the book, and I ran it for just over a week, from like 2 days before the launch to the Sunday after the launch.
Mm-hmm.
And 215 added me to their to read list,
Mm-hmm.
which I at first I thought that's wonderful, but I signed up for a giveaway myself that ended a couple days ago just to see how it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And they've never said anything to me that I've lost, that I didn't win.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that they should send an email or even a Goodreads email on the site that says, thank you for entering this contest. Unfortunately, you didn't win.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, you signed up for this book. And then they'd say, oh, yeah, I do want that one. I'll go buy it now. But no, they just completely get to forget that they ever signed up for this.
True. That's true.
So
yeah.
I posted some nasty comments on Twitter to see if I could get their attention, but now I'm going to find out who I need to talk to say they need to overhaul this one, because there's no sense of me giving 5 away and generating this interest if it's all just going to get swept under the chair.
Yeah, actually what it gives, I mean, I didn't have results in terms of effect on sales, let's say.
Right.
But we just have to take into account that actually when these people add it to their to read list, for example, since many people by default link their Facebook account or Twitter account with the Goodreads, what it does is it goes viral. So their friends on Facebook see that this book was added to their to read list. Okay. So what it does is these giveaways are better in terms of getting visibility and having people who otherwise wouldn't see your book cover or book title see that and get exposed to the book, rather than increase sales, because the sales results, I don't think that it directly affects increases sales. Right. But in the respect of visibility, it helps a lot. And in terms of how many books to give away, it's tricky also, because, I did it with just one once, and I've got the same results like when I did it with 3. So basically, the number of books you're giving away doesn't make a really big difference, actually.
I found that people signed up for it on the weekends. Throughout the week, hardly anything happened. But I'll tell you, each time on Saturday, I probably got 80% of the people signing up for my book on Saturday or the weekend. So I think if you want to be strategic about it, you start it on a Thursday and end it on a Monday. That way you've got 2 full weekends in there to get, I would say, the bulk of your people signing up. But that's a theory. I don't know if that's true or not.
Okay, so you did the giveaway. What else did you do?
I'm giving away a Kindle Voyager to one of the people who writes a review of my book on Amazon.
Wow, that's a generous giveaway.
It is. It's gigantic. But I really want those reviews. I think the reviews are more important to me at this point than probably anything else.
Yeah, agree.
I have a friend who's much more successful at writing than I am, and he's having a book launch, at least in our neighborhood, next week, and he's giving away a Kindle Fire. And I thought, oh boy, if I wanted a Kindle Fire, I'd go buy one. They're like $90. It's not a lot. But I thought people would really just get excited about this Kindle Voyager. And, I've got 3 reviews so far. I promised that you get 3 entries if you get a review in the first week. And I got these 3 people in. So I stretched it out. I talked to my tap dancing teacher. She says, I'm halfway through your book, but I'm going to run out of time before the weekend is up. And I said, okay, I'm extending it a week.
Yeah,
so,
that's exactly what I wanted to tell. Your book is quite large, and people,
right.
Most of the people, just like you, have full-time jobs and do other things aside. So it's difficult. I mean, they need to, first of all, find out about the book. Second, they should get it, and then they should read it, which takes a bit of time. So, stretching the time frame is very wise thing to do. I mean, it's not a nonfiction book, which is 20,000 or 15,000 words, which you can read in a day or 2. So that's
so people have until October 31st to get a review, and they'll get 1 entry. But if they get a review in before the 12th of October now, they'll get 3 entries. So I'm trying to get these people going up front, and the people I've talked to that have read the book, my cover artist today sent me a direct message from Twitter. He says, I just finished your book and it was great. I thought, well, good. Someone liked my book. And I was really shocked, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm trying to sound humble. Maybe I'm just not confident of myself, but I was excited to hear that he really liked it. And like I say, my tap dancing teacher, she says, this is great. And she's halfway through it. And
you should be proud of yourself because, first of all, many, many people have books in their mind and would love to write a book, but some of them never start. Many of them just quit in somewhere in the middle and never finish. And some finish it but never share it with the world. So you already accomplished a lot by having it out there. And as you said, every book has its reader, and there will always be people who will like the book which has been written. So there's nothing shocking in there. You should just, you've done the big deal. Now you can just go back, relax, and enjoy the good feedback you're getting.
Yeah. I put it on KDP Select. So I've got it on there for 90 days. And so that'll be like through the end of December. And I plan on releasing my next book, which is the teenage vampire love story, probably around the 10th of December. So my plan right now is about 3 weeks before that, I'm going to drop the price of this one to 99 cents. So I'm hoping to have enough reviews lined up that, it'll get promoted. Hopefully a little bit more by Amazon. And see if I can rack up a little more interest with the knowledge also that this next book is coming out in December.
Yeah.
So that's my plan.
Okay. And so are you happy so far with the results of your book launch?
I was a little disappointed knowing that I hadn't sold thousands of them. But I'm a dreamer. I'm a writer. That's what we do. We make things up and then expect them to come true. But I'm really happy with it. I'm holding the book in my hand. I got to sign my first 2 copies on Monday night. Like I say, I've been tap dancing. This is my 20th year of tap dance. And I went into the studio, and the woman who owns the studio said, you got to sign my book when you come back out. And then my own, dance instructor says, got to sign my book before you leave. And so I got to sign them, and it was a lot of fun. Right?
I'm amazed. I mean, you're doing so many things, and I'm just amazed about the way you're managing your time. It's just amazing.
It's probably, there's a fine line between, bravery and insanity. And I don't know where I spend most of my time, but I've got a great family. You say, have I used my life in any of my stories? Well, I've written a couple of stories about, including a child with autism. So there is that. And my book coming out in February is going to be a lot darker. It's going to be, again, young adult, but it's on the galactic battle base out in the middle of the galaxy. And there'll be teenagers that have issues. My older daughter, her birth mother was schizophrenic and using heroin during the pregnancy. So she has her issues.
Well,
And
and you say you had a boring life. Come on, I mean, your life has been extraordinary, at least.
yeah, I've done some things. Being in the Army for 5 years was good. It was during peacetime, and yeah, I've been to South Africa, so yeah, I've been around a bit. But I plan on using psychology in that next one coming out in February. The girl's going to have a self abuse problem, and her boyfriend is the victim of childhood sexual abuse. Which are both serious problems to me that concerns to me. The teenage suicide and teenage self-cutting and that type of thing. I'm concerned about that. And I can see my own daughter that has issues from her, inherited from her birth mother that could cause her to do the same type of thing or be schizophrenic and homeless, living on the street when she's 19, 20 years old. So I plan to use those things in my stories.
Well, I'm sure you have plenty of stories still to write and share. I mean, and the way you're organizing things, I'm absolutely sure that you'll eventually get where you want to be, because not many are so hardworking and so organized and so determined to move forward. So, first of all, thank you very much for coming over and sharing this listener interview. Thanks a lot for listening to my podcast, which I really appreciate. And I wish you lots of success with this first book and with all the upcoming books as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thanks for your podcast.
Well, that was your today's dose of encouragement and inspiration from Philip. If you also would like to have your book out there and share it with the world, but have some questions or don't know where to start and would like me to help you out, please check the website www.anialexander.com/gethelp, and you will have detailed explanation of how I can help you. I will be happy to help you out. I will be happy to work with you to come up with action plan, with strategy, with making your book successful. I've been in your shoes just a few years ago, and I've made many mistakes. I tried different things. I corrected the mistakes. I came up with things that work, and I will be able to save lots of your time by concentrating your time and effort on the things that already are tested and work quite well. Well, that's it, and I will be meeting you on Thursday, and meanwhile, just follow my example and do what I will be doing right now, and that is writing. Take care and have a nice day.